right. All right, we got everybody here. We'll go ahead and call the committee of the whole meeting to order. Is 6:30. What we'll do is we're going to jump. We've got discussion consent agenda items, but what I'd like to do is get in the our first half hours, get in the discussion around asset management updates. And Travis Scott, I'd like to bring you up, and if anything, probably because we might get into the weeds a little bit in the asset management, if we can start with the Hendershot resolution first, the traffic control order. And that way we've just got our bases covered with that and roll into asset management.
Hey, thanks. We'll make this one real quick. The Hendershot extension project, which provides a connection between Northridge Drive and 4 Mile Road at the intersection there at 4 Mile and Hendershot, is complete. The road's been built and all of the underlying infrastructure, the water main, sanitary sewer, and storm sewer have all been installed and are accepted by the city of Grand Rapids. So it's time to accept the road into the public system. All of their paperwork's done. The project looks really good. We've been out there and inspected it. So there's two things before you tonight. One is the Act 51 resolution for certification. This accepts the street into the public system, opens it to the public, and adds it to our Act 51 inventory for future funding and maintenance. And the second item is a traffic control order that just establishes a stop sign, a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, and adds it to the truck route system. So if there's any questions.
Commissioners, pretty cut and dry, but
Exciting to see it adopted into the road network. Good job, everyone.
awesome. All right, so we'll be good at the 7 o'clock for approval for both. Thank you. See, we get the easy things out of the way so we can check our list off.
Asset management. We are here to give you a real quick refresher. We come in about every 2 years and talk to you about asset management and the principles and policies that we follow. So the reason that that's coming to you tonight is because I think Gary was preparing to come in and talk about some of the road work that the DPW is going to take on. And in talking to Daryl, he said, you know, we've got with Marv, one new commissioner, and everybody else could probably use a little bit of a refresher. So we're going to go through a quick refresher on the asset management. If we go over things too fast, as always, you can call us. We'd be glad to meet with you. Marv, especially if this is something you're really interested in, you want to get together, we can get together, spend an hour or whatever it takes to go through and bring you up to speed on this stuff. So with that, Travis is going to walk through the asset management part, and then Gary's going to jump in and talk a little bit about the roads that are in Walker that he'd like to touch this year.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think last October, we were here talking about this 2020 transportation asset management plan that we update every 3 years. So today we're kind of zooming in on the topic of just pavement within the subcategories of transportation. So hopefully this advances, and doesn't seem to want to advance. You just hit enter, please. I might be saying this a lot. Okay, so so the evolution of asset management, you go ahead and enter. Okay, this you might as well just give me the keyboard. So just to back up a little bit here, asset management, thank you. I don't know why that thing's not working. You're going to be hitting enter a million times because I like to do the animations. Anyways, asset management goes all the way back to 1951. Public Act 51 of 1951 kind of sets the stage for roads and funding. And so that's kind of where the story begins. And then you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, that was our original database that to this day still exists over in DPW. These index cards that are in this metal box. That's kind of every single road segment and when it was built and then how it was been maintained over the years. So hopefully, okay. So then we fast forward a little bit to early 2000s, and the Government Accounting Standards Board comes up with rule number 34, which is kind of a subcomponent of asset management. And this is putting a dollar amount on all of our assets, our roads, our sidewalks, our stormwater, and this helps with bonding ratings. And then around the same time, the Michigan Transportation Asset Management Council comes along and says, we're here to help you out. We want you to we want to kind of take asset management from this kind of idea out there and come up with tools to to practically implement it. So we go to the trainings, learn a little bit. We come to the city commission in 2007. This was our first kind of big rollout of taking asset management from a concept into this is how we're going to do it in Walker. And that was a joint presentation that all three of us were at, and we're still here today. And then just recently, this Michigan Infrastructure Council has come on the scene and has said, okay, we started out asset management, kind of looking at pavement, and then it went to transportation. Let's broaden it out to all of infrastructure. And so it's kind of this growing topic. So asset management is a very loaded word that has a lot of history behind it. And then the Michigan Infrastructure Council had the requirement of doing this transportation asset management plan that we were here in October for. So I say all of this to say, we've kind of gone from pavement to transportation to infrastructure, but today we're going right back to pavement, right back to where it all kind of began. So pavement asset management. Here are some slides from way back in the day. You can tell. So the key to success for pavement asset management, you'll hear this buzzword a lot, the right fix on the right road at the right time. So that's kind of like one really large concept. The other concept, we can thank Scott with this three-legged stool. He kind of coined this. It's this balance between the technical or engineering data, the experience, or what we like to say the DPW kind of has eyes on, and the political considerations. And then this other thing is just a mix of fixes. I just Googled Michigan mix of fixes and found MDOT uses this term. So we'll get into this stuff a little bit later. So right fix, right road, right time, three-legged stool, mix of fixes. Those are kind of big concepts. So in October, we went over this. This is kind of the meat and potatoes of our how we do pavement asset management in Walker. We call it the budget decision tool because it helps us set our budget every year. And I'm going to go through it a little fast. And Marv, if we want to go sit down and talk about it more, we can do that in the future. But basically, that's 4 steps: 1, 2 on the left-hand side, 3, 4 towards the middle. The first step is just what's your inventory? How much road do you have out there? The easiest way to calculate that out is not how many miles of road, but how many lane miles. That's another way of basically saying square footage, but an easier way to calculate it out. So the number of lanes you have times the number of miles that you have creates your inventory. So we have about 278 lane miles in Walker. Concept 2, or point number 2, is just a concept to kind of think about and kind of wrap your brain around, is that every year, every lane mile ages 1 lane mile year. So if we have 278 lane miles in Walker, every year the system is 278 lane mile years older. Okay. Maintenance 3 is where we do most of the work. This is our maintenance and repair options. This is where we've got our mix of fixes in here. And we've got how much life extension each fix gives on average, an average cost per lane mile based on historical data and some estimates. The blue numbers are what we kind of play around with. What do we realistically think we can do this year, trying to get a good balance of fixes. You do some calculations to figure out the lane mile years gained and some calculations to figure out the total cost. So in this example, which is just an example, with our mix of fixes, we would gain 292 lane mile years, and that's greater than our 278 lane mile years that we age. So that would be positive, and it would cost around $1.25 million. That's kind of a number we see kind of constantly pop out through this tool over the years, is around 1.25 is kind of that break-even point. I mean, step 4 is just that analysis. We would gain 14 lane mile years, which means that the system should get slightly better, right? If it's a negative number, it's going to get worse. If it's 0, it should stay about the same. If it's positive, it should roughly get better. Once again, just a high level, all the streets in Walker kind of planning tool that we use. Well, we also have to kind of measure to see how we're doing on this. And so we've been taking Paiser ratings, which is a 1 to 10 scale, where we drive all of the streets and kind of calibrate your eyeball. And there's these different surface conditions you're looking for to rate them 1 to 10. It's a quick and dirty way to rate the condition of our pavements. We've been doing it since 2007. The blue lines are major streets. The green lines are local streets. We rate our major streets every year, our local streets every 1 to 3 years, just depending on if we have funding for it. And you can kind of see 2007 on the left-hand side, our majors started at a 7 on a scale of 1 to 10. And now we're 5.7-ish. And you can kind of see how it's kind of took a big dip early on when we went through a recessionary time period, and we've been kind of flatlined since then. We can talk about this more later as we go on, but that's how we do our conditions. So another way to look at that data is to put these points on what's called a pavement deterioration curve. This one's in pretty rough shape because we photocopied it a long time ago, but it tells a good story. So pavement doesn't deteriorate linearly, it deteriorates exponentially. So once it starts going bad, it goes bad really quick and it kind of drops off. So what you want to do is, while the pavement's is above that 4 level, that's where you get the best bang for your buck. Once it goes below 4, it costs a lot more. Reason being is 4 is kind of the break between fixes to just the asphalt. If you go below 4, then you're getting into the gravel and sand underneath it, and it's a major reconstruction project, and it costs way more to do that. So where have we kind of tracked on this in the future? In 2007, our major system was nice and high up on the curve. 2020, we're kind of at that inflection point, and our locals always lag our majors. That's just the way it is. We put more money probably into the major system than all the locals per lane mile basis. At this point, I want to turn it over to Gary to talk, because this is kind of where we take the technical network level approach, and we have to work hand in hand with Gary as to the nitty gritty details. What fixes are we going to do on what streets from point A to point B? And so I'll just hit the left mouse here. I'll hit it for you as you're ready.
Okay. So basically in the last 5-6 years, what we've been doing on our maintenance fixes have been crack sealing and 2-inch overlay. So that has basically been what we've been doing. As you can see, the ratings were slipping a little bit, and we have some roads that I'm going to bring in some micro seal and try to do some micro seal on it this year. The chip seals, the last time we did that was 2016 on O'Brien with a fog seal. Some people don't like the chip seals, and we quit using those in neighborhoods quite a few years ago, because if it's not black and smooth, people have tendency to complain a little bit about it. So we've got West River Drive, which is a big section of road. That's one of them that we're going to look at to do that. And then one other neighborhood, Maple Row, Sunset Hills, in that area, which our Pazer ratings are around 5 or 6. And we crack sealed all those, got those ready for prep for that type of work to get done. So met with a contractor last Thursday on West River Drive, talked to him about it, because it's been a few years since we have done micros. And he said it's a very good candidate for it. So we're just going to the plan is to put a 2-course micro on that. So if we look at the Pazer ratings there, that map isn't really too far up to date, because you can see Butterworth, that section got overlaid last year. So that would be probably in the green. We rated it early, right? Yeah, we rated early on that. So that map's a little old. So we go from there. So is there any more slides, or where are we at here?
Yeah, so we got so what that map that we just showed is kind of, we can show it pictorially. We also have, this was an easy year, this is just our major system, and we have 7 pages of itemized data that will sit down between engineering and DPW and kind of go through the list and look at each road segment by segment. And Gary, this kind of gets into a little bit of what you were talking about, the different types of deterioration. In the next slides, the types of fixes.
Right. So the transverse cracking, we look at roads after they're overlaid reconstruction, because that's also on the list. And, that comes through engineering, like Walker Avenue reconstructed. A lot of money, it gets done. Kenny Avenue, same thing. So we look at that road after 1 or 2 years, if there's any cracking, we crack seal and we get right on top of that. So the longitude alligator cracking, that road's pretty gone for, that's going to take some work on it, whether it's usually a 2-inch overlay, edge mill, and then overlay. Longitudinal cracking, that's pretty severe on that road. It'd be something rather than crack sealing. So the polishing, rutting is a good candidate for micro seals. So there you go. So there's a few examples of what we do. Those pictures aren't us, but they're examples of what we do. So the lists that we have are basically West River Drive, and then we're looking at Kenny and Leonard for major roads. And then I have just a long list of local roads. We haven't bid it out yet, so I can't give you the nailed down version of what we're gonna do because of getting it bid out for the 20, the next season, the 21-22 pavement. So prices should be about the same, but with micro seals, we're talking about 2-course micros are about $3 a square yard, and where overlays have been hitting $9 a square yard. So to get some of that money back into the pavers and get the numbers up a little bit, some of the other roads are gonna have to lay a little while. They might get a little worse. And then, hey, why is this road getting done and our road's not getting done? Well, the little pavement preservation that we got, you know, you gotta put something on top of the roof before it gets too bad, so. Anything else? That's it. Any questions on my side?
The only question I have, I think a couple of those manholes we were talking about, I don't think those are sinking at all. I think it's because we've probably had so many layers of the chip seal or whatever. Are we milling do any of those get milled before we put down chip seal, or is that not part of that process on, I mean, I can't think of a particular street, but.
No, we take a look at them. You know, we want all those manholes, we get them as close as we can. If they're busted up, we'll rebuild them. So.
They seem to be scattered. I don't think there's any particular pattern or whatnot. I just wondered if that fits, do we mill that or do we raise that up or?
We assess each manhole. We look
Okay.
at it because some of the older manholes will have like sand lime brick and, you know, they'll start to teeter and stuff. You know, we might bust those out, put new rings and build them back up. Or we use adjustment rings too, like when we pave. We just got done paving Northridge this Saturday, small section in between Walker Village and the new part there, you know, so then we put riser rings, you know, to match it. You know, hitting manholes is always a little bit of a trick, and you know.
And it doesn't make sense to me. I would think that Grand Rapids would be responsible for them if they're sanitary, but that is not the case, correct?
No, we take care of them. So they provide some castings like their water boxes. We don't buy, you know, the risers and stuff like that. So, you know, they work a little bit with us on that side of it.
I mean, because in your defense, it would be pretty costly.
Yeah.
You know, start doing manholes.
Yep.
You know, shut offs, et cetera. So, okay.
Anything else, commissioners? For Gary? All right, Scott? Thanks, Gary.
These guys did a great job staying on task, so I had one extra thing to kind of add. Travis mentioned the list of the road ratings, and this is the time that we get prepared for what's called the TIP, the Transportation Improvement Program, where we go through all of those road ratings and we start to look at what's high, what's low, what's in need of surface repair, what's in need of reconstruction. And it's almost like preparing for the NFL draft. We go through and have this list of candidates and looking through to see which projects are eligible for which grants. And as we go into those meetings, we have a list of 6 or 8. Usually it's a shorter list. This year, I think if you look at some of the pages we've got, you know, with things highlighted, we've got a lot more candidates than we've had in the past because our ratings are a little bit lower. But we'll be preparing to go in there with this list of potential projects, and we may say we have 6 that we'd really like to hit. And then when it comes right down to it, and the wrangling that occurs in these meetings, we might end up with number 2, 4, and 5 or something like that, just because of things like, is it on a bus route? Does it have a very high traffic volume? Is it eligible for this grant, but not this grant? You know, what year can you do it? So there's a whole bunch of moving parts that go into that. But we will work with manager's office and try to share that list with you so that we have some feelings from you too, as far as importance, because I think that certainly plays a role. The 3-legged stool that we talked about, you know, we can't look away from the political side of this and trying to incorporate where a development might be occurring, where there might be more urgency than others. And so that will be coming probably within the next 4, 6, 8 weeks. And we'll try to share that.
And Mr. Mayor, if we can, I would just add that, and I appreciate all the work you guys do on this, and it's something that is a priority for me certainly, and I know the other members of the commission But one thing to always make sure that we're considering is some of these roads that may need a certain level of improvement now, there are other improvements we want to make on those corridors. And making sure that when we're putting that list together, we're prioritizing if this project is going to need a full reconstruction in the near future for other reasons, I guess putting that into the consideration and prioritizing our budget and our funds to consider that as well. Because I see a couple of roads just right off the bat in our photograph there that I could see some other improvements that may need to be made and that kind of being upgraded from a certain type of project to another on that basis.
Yeah, so and a good example, that might be a road that doesn't have sanitary sewer, but is eligible to have it put in, sewer is available in the area. And a lot of times Gary will say, let me know what's going on with that because it's due for an overlay in a couple of years. And so if we can marry those two things together, that's a great way to go because we can use the money that would be spent on the sewer to help with the road reconstruction at the same time. So trying to marry those together. That's what asset management really is. Okay, thanks.
All right, commissioners, while we have Scott, Travis, Gary here, any other questions, dialogue? Seeing none, gentlemen, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let's jump in the interest of time. Are there any discussion on the consent agenda items? Seeing none. Let's get through our reports, jump to the city managers.
Excuse me, you want to do the PCI contract?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Good call.
Righty, well, good evening. We provided you folks with a cover memo and a budget update, a couple of pages, and then the two contracts that we ask you to consider tonight for inspection services. For the past several years, we've been outsourcing our building inspections and then our trade inspections to a company called PCI. And what we try and do is align those contracts so that they track together. So one doesn't get ahead of the other one, what have you. So we try to bring them both in at the same time for your consideration. Our current contracts expire on June 8th of 2021. So we're a little bit ahead of the game this year. And therefore the contracts themselves are forward dated in case they get approved tonight. There are no substantial changes to the contracts. So we still have a fixed fee for building services. And then we have what we call an 80-20 split for plumbing, electrical, and mechanical services. That's the same layout, same fee schedule that we've had since we first went with PCI. So they have not raised their rates over the years, which is nice. And we confirmed that with them again prior to putting your packet together for this consideration. We also provided you with the budget to actual reports for community development, both revenues and expenses. And it's interesting to see that despite the pandemic and the closings and the shutdowns, the department is still $170,000 in the black. So you have, as you all know, quite a bit of development activity that has continued to go through community development despite a very unusual year. And that looks good for us on the other side, the general revenue for the city with income tax and property tax as well. So we have a very lean organization in CDD. And again, PCI is a big part of that. I continue to be pretty impressed with the way they do things. They're responsive. We get a full palette of inspectors because as I've said over the years, it's difficult to have one building inspector cover all of the types of building that we have in Walker, where you may go from a small shed all the way up to a major manufacturing center. So one of the benefits of having PCI is that they can bring in their specialists or they can spread the load out so that we get a really comprehensive view of all the different types of construction that happens in the city of Walker. So in a nutshell, for the sake of time, that's it. We're asking you to consider both contracts tonight, both the building contract and then the plumbing, electrical, and mechanical inspection contracts with PCI. And we will go from there. Glad to answer any questions, comments, et cetera.
Commissioners.
Yeah, I just have one for you, Frank. Do we, like Chuck DeWitt, does he do just residential or, and by the way, he is outstanding. So I guess that's, I don't want him to leave Walker, like, so I know you said they do different things, like, but does he do like residential per se?
Yes.
And then somebody else would do commercial, industrial, depending on what needs to be done.
I think it depends on their workload, but Chuck Dyke is our primary building official. He has that title.
Okay,
And then he has a bunch of other building inspectors who can step in for him. If the workload gets too high, or if something isn't in his comfort zone for reviewing, then he can pull in another inspector from PCI.
sure. And I would obviously I get that he isn't going to do plumbing or electrical or HVAC or, you know, whatever. So I get that. So.
Yeah, but he is pretty comprehensive though. He'll look at everything from, you know, a small residential issue all the way up to major manufacturing. But again, I think it's good to have that he has some backup and people that he can go to say, you know, let's take a look at this together. Where in the past we really didn't have that. So I think he does an excellent job. I hope he sticks around as well. You know, a lot of our building officials, you know, they're getting almost to retirement age. But we have seen with PCI that they're starting to bring in the next generation. So every once in a while, you'll see some new inspectors come in and tag along, either with Chuck or with the plumbing, electrical, mechanical people.
Commissioners, anything else? All right. I think the only thing I would add to that is I think to the past year, we had a number of our projects that PCI showed the flexibility, and I think the agility probably is a even better word, in helping keep things on track. COVID really presented some challenges, and where they might not have been back to work, they were very flexible and really adapted to the needs we had to keep those projects on track. When we look at the revenue that's associated with that new building taking place, that's really critical. Stuff can't come to a halt unless it absolutely has to, and it did not. So I know we had some interactions over this past year that were just outstanding and left me saying just that this really is a logical choice for us. So, all right. So any questions on this before 7 o'clock? All right. We are at 6:58, coming on 6:59. I'm waiting for 6:59 and then we'll. All right. We're going to go ahead. I think we're safe. Madam Clerk, we're going to go ahead and call our 7 o'clock meeting to order. If I could actually ask Commissioner DeShane to deliver the invocation for us this evening.
Dear Heavenly Father, in honor of our upcoming holiday, help us to remember those who have made the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom. Please hold all servicemen and women in your strong arms. Cover them with your grace and presence as they stand in the gap for our protection. We also remember the families of our troops and ask for your unique blessings to fill their home with peace, provision, and strength to fill their lives. Be with our community, our police, and our fire, and keep them all safe from harm. In your precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. And I'd like to ask the audience to please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. If I could ask our clerk to please call the roll.
Mayor Carey,
Present.
Commissioner Gilbert,
Present.
Commissioner Rapp,
Present.
Commissioner Glanville, present, Commissioner DeShane,
present.
Commissioner Broders,
Present.
and Commissioner Chase. Present. Thank you.
Thank you all. And could we get a woo-hoo, please? We're all up here without masks on because it's all been lifted. All right, good. Thank you. Move on. Next on the agenda is the approval of minutes from May 10th, 2021. Is there any discussion on this? Otherwise, entertain a motion for approval and support.
I'll make a motion.
Support.
Oh,
DeShane, Commissioner Glanville, thank you. Any other discussion on minutes? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passed. So next on the list, we're going to walk a very special item on. I see a young man in the audience that I had the pleasure of watching grow up over the years. And I think back to the times I couldn't get out of bed for 7:30 Mass at St. Anthony's. I'd go to 9 o'clock Mass, and I would see this young man actually 4 or 5 years old, bringing the collection basket around to the aisles. And it was kind of cool to see this just little tyke coming down. He's got the basket, just walking with confidence, acting with confidence. So as I watched him grow and watched him become, in my mind, a bit of the face of Blaine's coming into the front of the store, as I come in there, and just always very happy, very welcoming to everybody coming in. Mr. DeGroot just went through his Eagle Scout award ceremony, his court of honor, this about week and a half, 2 weeks ago, I believe it was. So we're pulling a surprise on you. I see mom in the back of the room. I see the rest of the family. So we have a little surprise for you. So we have 3 tributes we're going to read for you. One was read at your court of honor, but I'm going to embarrass you further in front of your mom. I'll read mine first. County Commissioner Steck is in the back of the room. He has joined us and has a proclamation for you as well from Kent County. And State Representative Huizenga is also here and has something for you from the state. So we're going to embarrass you a little bit more. Your mom said she wouldn't cry, as she promised me the other night, but we'll see how that goes. So. This proclamation recognizes Zachary A. DeGroot, a senior at Kennewood Hills High School and a member of Boy Scout Troop 325, and his accomplishment as an Eagle Scout, as well as his Eagle Scout Court of Honor that we celebrate. The vision of the Boy Scouts of America is to prepare every eligible youth in America to become responsible, participating citizens and leaders who are guided by the Scout Oath and Law. The Boy Scouts of America encourage Eagle Scout candidates to complete worthy projects to improve their neighborhoods and their communities. Zachary received the rank of Eagle Scout on January 21, 2020, and his Court of Honor was held on May 16, 2021. This is the highest award a Scout can receive. Very few move up through the ranks of Scouting, and only about 2% make it all the way to Eagle Scout. For his community service project, Zachary completed a major community service project for the Blandford Nature Center, in which he removed an old gate leading into the children's garden. He then constructed and installed a new gate for his community to benefit from. Zachary's also been tirelessly involved as a young servant leader in many other areas of our community, such as anti-bullying efforts at all levels of his schooling, marching and concert bands, technical theater club, and even actively serving as an usher at his church since he was 4 years old. Zachary's persistent progress through the ranks to achieve this prestigious award demonstrates his determination to prepare himself for a meaningful, productive role in society. I, Gary Carey, Mayor of the City of Walker, do here honor Zachary DeGroot of Boy Scout Troop 325 on his achievement of attaining the rank of Eagle Scout and the highest rank in Boy Scouts. I'd like to ask County Commissioner Steck to please come forward and he'll share his proclamation. Hey, Stan, Commissioner, would you hit the red button, please? So, thank you, or the middle button. There we go.
All right.
Perfect.
I think you still heard me up to this point. So it is my honor again to present you this proclamation from the Kent County Board of Commissioners, acknowledging that it is resolved. The Kent County Board Chair, Mandy Bolter, and I, Commissioner Stan Steck, and on behalf of all of the Kent County Board of Commissioners, am pleased to honor you, Zachary DeGroot, of the Boy Scout Troop 325, on your achievement of attaining the highest rank of the Boy Scouts, Eagle Scout.
Thank you, Commissioner. Representative?
Zachary, I don't have a proclamation or a tribute with me. It is my tribute, is my honor to present tributes on a regular basis to Boy Scouts throughout the area, and Eagle Scout is that highest honor. I was a Cub Scout leader for 13 years, and I always tried to inspire the Cubs to prepare for the honor of making the rank of Eagle Scout, one of the greatest accomplishments of your life, I can guarantee you. The rank of Eagle Scout, as the mayor said, is one that's very rarely achieved, and it will serve you well. And I always tell people that when somebody comes to my office, wherever I've worked, if that resume has on there Eagle Scout, it always goes to the top of the list, and they always get an interview. And as a tribute to that, my son, Blake, is an Eagle Scout, and he's in the Marines now. And so this might serve you better than you might think, because he, instead of just being a recruit, when he was in the Marines and the boot camp, he was immediately elevated to private first class, because our service bureaus, our Marines, our Air Force, Marines, all recognize the fact that Eagle Scout is rare, and it means tenacity, love for the country, responsibility, and integrity. So I congratulate you and honor you for your work there, and we will have a tribute for you soon.
And what we'll do, if it's all right, for Mom, I think it'd be kind of a cool picture for posterity purposes. I'll ask Representative and County Commissioner Steck to join me down in the front, and maybe our city commissioners and clerk could stand back here. Managers are welcome to join. And Zachary, if you'd come up, we'll have our proclamation piece up here. And I think I'd leave you with one last thing. Representative Heisinger mentioned at a court of honor about a year ago, for somebody pretty special. He had mentioned his son Blake. Had talked about one of the things that we look for as business leaders when we see on a resume certain things. It's an automatic. We're going to have a conversation. That resume gets put at the top of the list. Might be the right person, might not be for the job, but without a doubt, that is going to be somebody we look at. So it's a pretty special thing. It's a pretty cool thing. That's why we went a little above and beyond tonight for you. And as much as we want to give Dad credit back there, we're going to give it to Mom. She knows we did everything. So that being said, well, I invite you to join us up here. We'll get a quick picture for them, and we'll let you go then. Commissioners, if you want to join us from up top right behind me.
I'm afraid we're gonna get too tall. Congratulations. Congratulations.
And just a heads up that Zach will be also helping us out in the DPW this summer as a seasonal worker for us. Looking forward to that.
All right. Thanks again, Zach. Thanks, Mom and Dad. Well done. I would like to invite County Commissioner Steck up to share some updates from the county's perspective. And immediately following that, we'll have our state representative up to share updates from the state. Floor is yours, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mayor. And now that I know where the button is, I can be heard. So I commend you. At the county, we don't give the speakers that kind of luxury. That appreciate that. All right, so lots of things going on at the county. And so I tried to select a few of the items that I think you might be most interested in, but certainly if you have questions about any of the other initiatives or programs or efforts that are going on, I'm more than prepared to talk to you about that either now or later if you want to reach out to me. So let me just cover a couple of things, and then you can either interrupt me with questions or we'll wait at the end if you have any. The first thing I want to talk about a little bit is some of the new projects that the county is constructing. One of them, which you may see occasionally if you drive on Butterworth Avenue, we are proceeding with the construction of the long-awaited department headquarters for the Parks Department. Some of you may recall years ago when Millennium Park went in, there were those big round silos, and there was some talk that those would be converted into the park headquarters. Melanie will probably remember those conversations. For a number of reasons, that didn't work out, not least of which is it's impossible to air condition something like that. But at any rate, we have proceeded now with the saving of sufficient funds to allow us to go ahead and construct this. It is expected, they're in the ground now with the foundation, so it's expected by the end of this year, they will be in. So that's long awaited and thankful for that. We have a couple of other projects that we're also constructing around the county. Up in Cedar Springs, a new service center will be constructed there, and then a fleet facility building on the Fuller campus. Also anticipated we'll have those completed, if not later this year, first part of next year. Kent County Parks, something we're very proud of, are entering their centennial year this year and or next. And so we are undertaking a longer term strategic planning process, working with the foundation as well as the staff at the Parks Department, just beginning now to reach out to significant stakeholders for purposes of setting a new strategy, a new agenda for that. In the meantime, we continue to add additional acres to the inventory at the county, most recently adding, I think it was about 130 acres to Hazy Cloud Park. And we do look forward to eventually getting a new entrance into Millennium Park that will be at the intersection of Collindale and Butterworth. Once that is acquired sufficiently, that will then become the primary entrance to the park. So Kent County Convention Authority, it's been getting a fair amount of publicity lately. So let me see if I can and tell you where all that is. Again, the Convention Authority, which is a joint authority staffed by appointments from the county and from the city and the DDA, is responsible for the oversight and the management of three key facilities in our community. That's the Van Andel Arena, the DeVos Convention Center, and the Grand Place, the Performance Center adjacent to it. They are currently in the process of developing a strategic plan as part of the 30-acre redevelopment along the river. That would be south of Fulton Street and north of Wealthy. So that whole entire process, whole entire area is in the some stage being redeveloped, and that will include apparently an outdoor amphitheater. That is the proposed request. And it is also proposed that the CAA, the Convention Authority, would be the entity that would be principally responsible for operating that. That can only happen if the city ultimately votes to approve it and the county votes to approve it. That is yet to come, but anticipated. If you've been downtown lately, you can see that the realignment of the underground sewer system, which goes right through their property, is already being moved out, and that land is then being prepared so that the developments can go ahead. It's probably also going to have a linear park weaving through that up and down along the river. So that too may be, though not resolved, may be part of the county park system. That initiative, which is being spearheaded by Grand Action 2, not 1, but 2, will also continue some conversations about a couple of other facilities. And it's not clear whether the county will have jurisdiction or responsibility for that or somebody else. And that includes a large state-of-the-art aquarium, as well as an outdoor professional soccer field. So we'll see whether or not those come to bear. And of course, that is adjacent to the river. The Whitewater project is still pressing forward in fits and starts, but it is still on the agenda to go ahead. Most of that will be north of this property area, but it may have some connectivity to it eventually. So lots going on with respect to the Convention Authority. Some of you probably know about the developments of the Sustainable Business Park, which is part of the really aggressive agenda on the part of the DPW to put ourselves in a position of going without any landfill by 2030. It is still a stretch, in my opinion, to get there by 2030, and some significant things have to happen, but this is one of them. That is being able to identify a key tenant, an anchor tenant in the park that will be responsible for ensuring that ongoing operations of that landfill, so that at the end of the day, we put negligible amounts into a landfill. We'll have to watch that very carefully over the coming years because at some point you can't just wait and not have it and then try to go out and find a landfill. There's not a lot of them at Costco. So you really have to have a long-term plan. And I think we're probably looking at a couple of years down the road and we'll have to make those tough calls. But I still think it's a great agenda to be able to do that, to be able to accomplish not just by this sustainable business park, but aggressive strategic work on our recycling systems, as well as probably some renovation and rework of our waste to energy facility. Kent County Behavioral Health Crisis Response System. I'll just say a little bit about this because otherwise I'll talk all night about behavioral health and you know me, especially Commissioner Gilbert knows well the effort in the trenches in order to stabilize our behavioral health system. But this is something that we specifically have been working on across the county to find a good, solid, system-wide network that allows us to take all comers across the county, regardless whether you're insured or uninsured, whether you've got this insurance, Medicaid, Medicare, doesn't matter. The capacity to take them into the urgent crisis system and treat them immediately in the most appropriate care we can give them. And that means avoiding jail whenever we can. It means avoiding emergency rooms whenever we can, because neither of those are effective treatment modalities. And they're very expensive. So this is a system driven by not just the need to have much better care for our communities, but also to be much more cost effective in how we address these response and these issues. So I think that we have taken that conversation very aggressively. And I think by the end of this year, we'll have not only the oversight system in place, but we'll also have the first of our facilities identified and maybe moving forward to actual implementation. So hang on, I'm looking forward to that one. Let's see, KCCA, Kent County Community Action. Commissioner Glanville helps us significantly on that initiative. It's really the frontline response to the negative damage consequences of the pandemic and the mitigation orders. Just a ton of work going on there. And I'll just note one that's specifically attuned across the county, and that is the eviction avoidance process, where there are substantial funds of money that are going to be managed through the KCCA for purposes of identifying individuals who otherwise would be evicted now that that moratorium is either gone or illegal, whichever, it's going to go away. And there are thousands of individuals across the county who are at risk of being evicted. And when they're evicted, that's a problem for them, and it's a problem for landlords. There are many landlords as well that are hanging on to bare threads, waiting for some kind of solution here that allow us to be able to stabilize that and move forward. So that is going to be a significant effort over the course of the rest of this year. Some of you probably know we're looking for a new administrator. That process is well on its way. I serve on that search committee along with 6 colleagues. And we are at the point of starting interviews probably in the next few weeks. We're on target, we think, to be able to look at, I can't ever say replace Wayman Britt, to find the new administrator to take over once Wayman retires, probably at the end of July. And then lastly, you have money coming in, I know, from American Rescue Plan. And we have money coming in from the American Rescue Plan. We managed to get through a fairly dynamic process this year in distributing the CARES funds, about 116 million that we distributed across the county. We now have 130 million, which is the amount that's targeted to be given to the county from the federal government for the rescue expenditures. Different sets of limits, different sets of requirements, what you can use those monies for. And we know that our friends at the state have about $12 billion. They have to figure out what to do with that. So we're being cautiously pedantic, I want to say, but we're going to be very careful about what we just commit to spend this money in, because we have to weave other sources from the federal government, and particularly what the state may do with that. But it is likely to be focused on a couple of key infrastructure concepts. Broadband, we've already been looking at trying to expand broadband across the county so that it's an effective system everywhere in this county. We are likely to look at ways of using some of those funds for lead paint abatement and for PFAS abatement. Also two key targets identified in the AFB. And of course, water systems. We don't have a lot of water systems in the county, but we do have a county drain system, which would also be qualified. So we'll have to take a look at that. And then finally, just facilities enhancement. So part of the commission would have loved to just take those money and grant a tax relief and redistribute it back to the taxpayers, because in some ways it's more money than we initially would have thought necessary to address the COVID response. But that's not going to happen. We're going to take a hard look and find projects that basically stabilize our basic service systems over the course of the coming 10, 15 years. So those are some of the challenges. A lot going on in our sheriff's department as well. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but clearly we have some challenges there. And I'm sure you do too as well, finding new qualified, well-trained staff. This is not a profession that is easy to fill. And Gary's done creating more police officers, I think. So we just have to be very innovative in finding ways to attract qualified people. You can hire people in, but that's not the answer. The answer is to get highly qualified, trained staff. And those don't just drop out of the tree. We really have to work at that. That's a longer term strategy. It'll probably take more money to do it. It'll take more thought and more innovative ideas on how we find these folks. So those are some of the key areas. I got another page, but I'll probably draw at that point and see if you have any questions.
Commissioners?
I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Commissioner.
So I was wondering, so just in terms of the Sustainable Business Park, and I don't know if you're aware, I'm on the Waste to Energy Advisory Board.
Okay.
So, we're having a lot of conversations around the budget, which I was going to bring up in my comments today. And so just to kind of bring everybody's awareness to the fact that there are some really integral upgrades that need to take place at the waste to energy facility if we're going to finish out the contract that we have, really to continue providing this service to the county. And we're looking at ways that we might be able to pull in the whole county, expanding services to our townships and things like that. So, I heard you say that some of the ARP money might be able to be used to stabilize services going forward for the next 2 years. And I hope that some of that might help with pulling that Sustainable Business Park and the Waste to Energy program together.
Yeah.
Because, Grand Rapids is at the lead, really. I mean, we do a really good job with, particularly in the city of Grand Rapids, with sustainability and environment and things like that. And I'm not sure what that looks like in some of the outlying cities. So I'm wondering if there is a countywide effort to pull the townships and the municipalities together so that we can have a more cohesive regional plan for environmental sustainability, particularly, not just with the trash, but when we look at, the effects of climate change. We talk about all this development along the river, and that could be a bit of a throw of the dice, if we're not looking out for some of these things. So I'm wondering if there's anything, in the wings on that.
Yeah, it's an excellent question. There, to the best of my knowledge, there is not a formalized, structured conversation in place yet. I will say that we're well aware that the waste to energy facility will require some very significant upgrading, renovating. It is about 30 years, 40 years old now. I mean, it's getting to the point where its useful life is becoming problematic, and
Yep.
we're looking at the end of that. So what will that price tag be? 50 million, maybe more than, maybe 60 million. You may know better than I, but I'm thinking that in that range of what it's going to take to do that. But we're committed, the DPW is committed to that being one of the key 3 legs for achieving that degree of long-term sustainability. That is to be able to have a significant part of the waste stream go in through that waste to energy. So will that be what survives the conversation? It may be, as far as the AFP funds, it may be on that target list, it may not be. But as far as the conversation of is it time to enroll beyond the 6 cities in that process? I will say that conversation is going on. I'm just not prepared to say it's structured yet.
I know that can be a rather
Am I
delicate
playing a lawyer's trick there? You know.
Yeah, I know, like I said, I realize that can be kind of a delicate topic. And that's why I just wanted to kind of surface it
Yeah.
a little bit. You know, especially when we consider that some of our townships are bigger than some of our cities.
Yes,
So,
no, and I don't mind delicate topics because it's
Sure.
a challenge. And as I said before, to accomplish the very aggressive goal of this 2030 objective, I mean, everything, all the pistons have to hit for that to work, including that one. And both the waste to energy operations are susceptible to other influences within the economy, particularly the price of the energy that we can get, as well as the recycling system is entirely subject to some very dramatic changes and influences in the economy. So those are that are going to constantly have to be monitored, and it would be we'd love it if they're all making money, and we can just shove that money in, but you can't guarantee that at all the time. So that's why expanding that base makes a lot of sense.
all right, appreciate it. Thanks.
Yep.
Commissioners, any other questions, comments? Appreciate the efforts, all you do, the communication. Thank you for joining us too this evening. That's
You're welcome.
Very super special. So,
And feel
thanks,
free,
Commissioner.
if you have other questions, you know my email address, reach out.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative?
Thank you, Mayor. And it is always good to be back in Walker. It's good to see so many friendly faces. Before I get started, just a comment. I haven't been involved in any fights in Lansing due to the bandages on my forehead, nor are they subject to the campaign trolls. But I had a dermatological procedure done. So in case you're wondering, that's what's going on there. I thought I'd talk a little bit about office hours, and as a representative, it's in the title, representative. So we represent you. We represent the people of the districts that we live in and that we represent. And I do office hours 5 times a month. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about the issues that people bring forth at office hours. And number one is the budget. People want to know because it's mysterious. So much money, and as Commissioner Steck said, I think we frankly all have far too much money than we know what to do with. And as a conservative Republican, I don't think I'd ever hear myself saying that. But the truth of the matter is, every time we turn around, it seems like there are more dollars for us to spend. In fact, just last week, the Consensus Revenue Estimating Committee came forth and said that we look like we're going to have an additional $3.5 billion more than we thought we were going to have. Last week also learned that the federal government is sending us an additional $800 million. That was a complete surprise, and it's bizarre. When we have that much money, it requires us to operate diligently and to do things for the people that are going to have long-term impacts. Some of the ideas that have been floated around include things like, one of my ideas is doing more for HVAC for nursing homes that are older, that are not in great condition, that may have HVAC that's centralized. Even regardless of COVID, infectious diseases transmitted through air handling systems is a problem. And those are the kind of things that I think we should look in towards. Roads and infrastructure, of course, if you spend too much, it'll have an upward impact on the inflationary expense of building those things. So we have to be judicious on that. To that end, some folks have suggested that we pay down some of the bonds of some of the roads that we've already paved. Some folks have said maybe we should use some dollars to pay off the Flint water crisis settlement. Some of those things are subject to review, and the budget process is just that. It's the beginning. The House comes up with their policies and ideas. The Senate comes up with their ideas. We reconcile it, and it goes back to the governor. It's the 3 legs of the stool. And very rarely do those things end up the way that you would envision them to be in the beginning. I serve on the DHHS, Department of Health and Human Services Budget Subcommittee on Appropriations, the Transportation Subcommittee, the K-12 Subcommittee, and the Higher Education Subcommittee, which I chair. And higher education this year to me meant a lot as chair. I served on the committee 2 years prior. And when you work on a committee as a member, I believe that you look towards your district and the things that are happening in the 74th district, for instance. Transportation comes to mind, and I'm constantly advocating for the replacement for the Fruit Ridge Bridge. I'm sure the folks in the DOT are very sick of me talking about this and sending them letters, but I will continue to advocate tenaciously until it is done. But in the Higher Education Committee, when you chair a committee, you don't have responsibility for just your district. You have responsibility for 10 million people. And to that end, I really dug in deep when I got the assignment. Higher education is not my greatest strength, but I think that actually turned out to be a good thing because I could look at it objectively. I served on the committee for 2 years prior, but I really, pulled off my nerd hat and got out there and started doing spreadsheets. And no surprise to many, about 12 spreadsheets into it, I started to have these aha moments of, wait a minute. In the past, the state demographer has told us that K through 12 is in trouble because declining enrollment. Each school seems to have a smaller number of students each year. And what are the implications for that? Well, when they get their pupil funding, that means they get less. And some people say, well, that should be easy. The math is simple. But if you have a classroom that's predicated on a certain amount of dollars being there to support infrastructure, teacher, further up with the KSD with the superintendent, the building, the maintenance, the school buses and all that kind of thing. If you go from 28 to 25, basically all those same expenses are there. The same holds true with the higher education budget. Obviously, if the K through 12 budget is seeing a decrease, we can anticipate that the numbers are going to continue to go down. And as those numbers decrease, how do we fund the education program? Well, higher education has traditionally been funded by great legislators like me that have advocated for the districts and said we need more money for school X. Consequently, over many decades, it has resulted in a very upside down model. You can read in the Detroit News about the terrible things that the appropriations department is doing, about the terrible things that people are trying to cut universities and their spending. That's just not true. We're trying to provide a practical solution that will be sustainable for the future. As those numbers decline, I've made a presentation, and frankly, I didn't think I was going to get it out of my subcommittee, but I got it out of my subcommittee. It passed through appropriations and it passed through the House floor a couple weeks ago. The next step is it goes on to the Senate negotiations and the governor, of course. But it's a practical solution that says we know that there is a demand for research in our state, in our country. We know that great institutions like the University of Michigan pull in students from all over the state, this country, and in fact, the globe. And the research they do is incredible. So instead of just saying per pupil, I said, what if we were to give them dollars based on research that they did? So I said on the very front, on the top end, let's take $100 million and apply it not just to institutions that I happen to like or not like. Let's look at empirical evidence. The Carnegie Institute ranks each and every university in this country. Tier 1 universities would then get $33 million, Michigan, Michigan State, and Wayne State. And then we said, what if we're going to stand up and do the right thing and promote the pay the Indian Tuition Waiver Grant Program? It's a promise that was made by people before us, and I firmly believe in holding that up as well. And then we said, what if they can take the dollars that are left over? And we said, what if we're going to take that money and give it to on a per pupil basis? Now there's a bunch of other maturations in there to make it happen, to manage the politics of it. But I think it's a good policy. So if you have questions about that, I'd be happy to speak with you about that. Another thing people talk about on a very regular basis to me at office hours is unemployment. Just today, I personally received 2 calls from people who said that they have not yet received their unemployment dollars. It is an epic failure on the department. And we continue to work tenaciously to help people in need. These are people that wait a long time. I mean, it takes a lot of guts, I think, to wait to you have a problem that's so great that you have to call your state representative and ask for help. And I give them credit. And we do it. We do it every day. And it's sad to say, but it's true. I've had a number of people that come to me and talk about the voting bills. Last year's election resulted in lots of consternation, a polarization of our communities, our state, and our country. And I tell the story that when I was mayor, that when the clerk would ask for resources, we always made sure we had resources so that people would feel that there was integrity with our voting. And if there's not, then our democracy is at risk. So some people would argue and say these are voter suppression bills. Let me tell you, these are not voter suppression bills. These are bills that many of them were required or recommendations from the Office of the Inspector General or the Auditor General. the Auditor General said there are a couple things you could change to make voter integrity better. So those bills are out there. Did you know that if a person dies, that they go to the county clerk's office and they are the ones that hold the responsibility for the death certificate, but they are not legally allowed to remove that person from the qualified voter file? Did you know that outside agencies and organizations not related to the government have the ability to access the qualified voter file, and on and on? And did you know that some people have said and argued that certain bills take away rights and privileges from others? But the reality is these bills, they do things like ensure that there's integrity and education for workers at the polls. Those are things that I can stand behind. So there's a lot of misinformation out there. Maybe not all the bills are great, but I think in general, the spirit of ensuring that we have election integrity is there. And so that's been a big issue. Line 5 has been another one of those issues that's been highly polarizing, but I tend to be an evidence-based kind of person. When we see millions and millions of barrels or gallons of fluids and petroleum travel through a pipeline that goes underneath the Straits of Mackinac, I think we all take pause and say, is this being done safely? In fact, there was a spill. I think there was 800 gallons that was spilled at one point in time. The alternative, any alternative, is currently not safe. And frankly, the governor is a little bit over his skis on this one because this is an international pipeline. It originates in Canada and it has terminants in Canada as well. And it also goes to Ohio. So that's interstate commerce, not ruled by the governor. And when we look at who is a recipient, who is a beneficiary of that pipeline, think about this: 65% of the fuel that's burned that comes out of Detroit Airport comes from Line 5 that feeds the refineries in Ohio. Think about Pearson, Toronto Airport. The majority of the fuel comes from Line 5 to fuel the largest airport and our biggest trading partner in Canada. So I tend to look at it from a data-driven approach. Yes, we always have concerns, but there is a solution. The solution about encasing that in a tunnel that will keep it safe and result in instill us managing environment that's good. We obviously cannot convert all that fuel into rail tank cars. There are no rails that go over the Mackinac Bridge, and we could not possibly hire thousands of truck drivers to haul that much fuel on a daily basis as well. Also, just like to say that we've done a lot of really great things with criminal justice reform. Standing up for those who've been wronged has been probably one of the greatest things for me to see. People who have not been, that have been put in bad places because of penalties that are put on them, people that have gone to jail for things that probably shouldn't have. Proud to say that I voted yes on those bills. So I could talk for a long time. I know you have another agenda to go through, but I thank you for your time and always happy to take a call or question from anybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Commissioners, questions, comments? I think probably a summary on behalf of the commissioners up here when we look at where we're represented at the county and state level, and we got two pretty solid people here that represent our community very well. So thank you both very much. Let's jump into Jason. Anybody out in Zoom land on public comment on agenda items? Okay. All right, we'll bypass that. Reports from city manager. We covered the PCI contract renewals for the community development department at the 6:30 committee of the whole meeting. Is there any other dialogue or questions on this? Yep. So we'll go ahead and entertain a motion for approval and support.
I'll make the motion.
I'll support.
Rapp and Chase. Is there any other discussion on the PCI contract? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The contract has been renewed. Thank you. Next on the list is the consent agenda. We have 3 items. First is expenditures in the amount of $333,277.06. The second is traffic control order 267 for sign placements on Hendershot and the new extension that we discussed at the 6:30 meeting. And then third is the interlocal agreement and designated assessor contract. And I don't know, Daryl, Frank, if there's any additional color you want to share to this one. Daryl, probably from Kelly's perspective.
No, if you have questions, this is really geared towards communities that have had troubles in the past complying with the AMAR audit, which is the overall audit of assessing departments. Our department, happy to say, always passes with flying colors or with one or two minor adjustments. So this is just really a safety net that the county is required to provide in the county as part of the assessing reform package. So Kelly has no issues with it, and I doubt that we will ever have to use this. And if we do, we have an outlet to utilize it need be.
And that's to bring others up to basically snuff with the rest of us that do things the right way. So. All right, any questions then on the consent agenda items? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for approval and support.
Make motion?
I'll support.
Gilbert, DeShane, any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed? Consent agenda passed. Thank you. Next is resolution 21-602. It's a resolution for certification of Hendershot Extension Development, Hendershot Avenue of 1,922 feet. We discussed this at 6:30 committee of the whole. Is there any other dialogue or questions on this? I'll entertain a motion for approval and support.
I'll make a motion.
I'll support it.
Chase and Rap support. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Resolution 21-602 is passed. Jason Rotman, one last time, any other public out in Zoom land? None. Chief, I won't put you on the spot. Any thoughts, words of wisdom from last Monday night? You had a fantastic ceremony. Appreciate Commissioner Glanville and Gilbert. Even going through the spook house inside there where it was dark and smoky. It was pretty cool, but hats off. A lot of upward movement, a lot of recognition, and I think that bodes very well for our department, its future. It's good to see the young faces, the newer faces, I should say, coming in. But just all in all, just a great ceremony. So thank you.
Thank you. A lot of new faces there, but thank you.
All right. Good enough. All right. So past that, now we'll start over with the managers. Frank, we'll start with you.
No comments from me. Thank you.
Daryl.
Two quick things, obviously, in the news today, the governor's announcement on the revised MIOSHA rules. So we're happy to see that at City Hall here. Be following those guidelines, not requiring masks if you've been vaccinated, and we'll continue to monitor that as it goes along. So great to be here at a meeting and see faces. It's awesome. And then just secondly, thanks to the Finance Committee. We had a meeting prior to this, so appreciate all the work and support on that. And we'll be seeing the proposed budget at the June 14th meeting at a public hearing and hopeful adoption at that time. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Rapp.
Nothing really other than dealing with a little bit of zoning issues with vegetation, parking and whatnot. So Megan's been doing good with that. So that's all I've got.
Commissioner Shane.
No, just a great job, Daryl, to you and Dan for a Finance Committee meeting. I know that takes a lot of time and he does a nice job. Thank you.
None for me.
Mr. Groders.
We had a meeting this afternoon that fairly significant with the developers of Lincoln Lawns. And I thought it went really well and we were powwowed for 2 hours. And I think we made some progress. So I think we're on the right track.
Thank you. Commissioner Glanville.
Yeah, as I mentioned to Commissioner Steck, I wanted to kind of bring you up to date and give everybody just a little bit more information about what's going on with waste to energy and the budget there and the predicament that, well, not predicament, but the issues that we're dealing with. So the waste to energy facility needs about $35 million to do the requisite repairs. One is to a control panel system. The other one is to the crane that moves. And you can go in there and take a tour. It's really cool. So go on in and take a tour of the waste energy facility and you'll see what I mean by crane. I mean, they're, I don't know, probably 15 feet, you know, these giant cranes that pick up all the garbage and throw them in the incinerator. So we had, was it 20-ish years ago, that facility came online with the 6 cities, you know, agreeing at that time to a specific contract, and that contract is kind of coming up, that agreement is coming to an end. And so everything is kind of on balance right now. How is that going to move forward with the contract for the 6 cities? One of the things we look at when we talk about funding for this is the tipping fees for trash removal. And we have to, so what that means is every time a truck comes in, they tip, right? And then they pay a fee for that. And so what happens is we have a contractual amount that we work at, but then in the townships and that aren't a part of the agreement, they can negotiate the price of the tipping fee so they can get things done, at the market rate, and we're beholden to this contract rate because it works better for us as a group. But it takes away, some of our freedom in determining the revenue and the cost and the budget for the facility. So we've been holding the tipping rate at a really nice number for a number of years now, which is right around $55. And what we really need is around 80. So we can't, raise that fee by that much. And so we're looking at ways that we can diversify revenue streams so that we can continue running the waste to energy facility. And we're hoping to get a combination of ARP funds, potentially thinking about potentially bonding, thinking about potentially pulling these, if we can get the townships in on the conversation, and things like that, so that we can levelize the tipping fee, over the next, I think it's like 15 years we're looking to do. Commissioner Steck talked about it just left me. He talked about.
Waste energy.
He did, yes. It just left. Okay, well, there's a moment. There's a COVID moment. So gosh, no, it's totally important, and now I can't think of what it was. At any rate, so we're just looking to have what equitable rates across the, across the region, and what we can do to tie in that sustainable business park so that we're lowering the need for landfill, because we're running out of landfill space.
No landfill by 2020.
Yeah, well, that's the goal is, so, right,
Aggressive
but the
goal.
thing is, even if we don't reach that goal, eventually, we are going to run out of landfill space. I mean,
Right.
you can't just keep throwing your trash underground. So there needs to be something. And that's why all these programs are coming together. So we're coming together at a, it's coming together, I think, at a good time. But just so you're aware that we need to be open to these conversations with our city partners, our municipal partners, and then potentially, expanding that to the townships to see how we can come together as a county and a region to really get our hands around this sustainability issue and what we're doing with trash and recycling, so that we can be, good stewards of the land that we have, because, I said, eventually it runs out. Yeah. Oh, that's what I was saying. The cost of energy, he mentioned the energy rates that we get paid. We just, the DPW last year negotiated an excellent rate for our kilowatt hours. We came away with right around $80 a kilowatt hour that we get for the energy that comes from waste energy. And in a lot of places, because solar is coming in and kind of, causing some movement in the market there are some places that are only getting like $30 a kilowatt hour. And we were able to lock in the 80 kind of just in time for, I believe I can't remember for how long, but it's for numerous years. And I can pull it out. But just so you know, the DPW is doing their part to really make sure that we're, like I said, that we're sustainable and that the revenues are coming in. So hopefully, like I said, we can do some partnership, expand that partnership a little bit. So you'll be hearing more about that. There's also a advisory committee that is meeting to talk about all the mixed waste processing that has a number of representatives from around the area. So more to come on that, but that's kind of in a nutshell version. I'm happy to do a little bit more detail around that if anybody's really interested. It gets pretty technical. It's taken me, a year or so to learn the language. So there's that. So that was kind of my big piece for today. And then I just want to say thanks again to Chief Pelton, and it's nice to have you here at our meeting. I want to say thanks to Scott and to the mayor and everybody who stepped up for Jean King and her family and those who've been involved with the sewage problems that they're having. It can be, my sister went through that a few years ago and I helped her with that. And yeah, not a pleasant situation and incredibly frustrating. I'm glad that we're able to step in and support. So thanks to the team for that. Thanks to, again, Scott and DPW and all the traffic work that they do. I know they're not here, but I really appreciate that every year they come in and give us these very detailed reports. Because I don't know about the rest of you, well, maybe not Steven so much, but a refresher on, the Act 51 and, asset management and all of these things. It's really helpful. So I appreciate the work that they do and the detail they put into it. I feel like they really take the time to make sure that we understand, what they're doing so we can make the best decisions for the community. So I appreciate that. And then one final question I have or concern. I got an email today from a community member who has some questions about the marijuana growing in the city. And so just looking at, if we were to be looking into ordinances, there's two sides to the question. One had to do with odor. Do we have an odor ordinance?
Well, you want me to jump in
I'm
a little
looking-
bit?
Yes, we've been involved with this
Yeah.
for a number of years.
Here's been, well, it is the law in Walker. Essentially, anything that's covered under the Medical Marijuana Act is allowed in the city,
Sure.
person to person. But when it comes to anything related to growing, distribution, or commercial frontage, storefronts,
Right,
those things are not allowed.
right.
So if this is a person-to-person issue, do we have a property maintenance code? Do we have a code that talks about off-site impacts? We do have that, and Megan runs that program.
Okay,
So I would probably direct you to her. If it's one of the things that's prohibited, that's different.
mhm,
That's something that we should really talk through with the city attorney.
okay. All right. Yeah, I didn't have a lot of details on it, and I don't know if it's, I know that those plants can be odorous. If they're grown in somebody's yard, you could smell it from your neighbor's yard, and so I don't know how much, like I said, I don't know all the details, but they
Sure.
seemed concerned that there was, it seemed to be bothering the neighborhood.
My guess would be that would be simply covered under nuisance for us.
It is most likely a nuisance code, and then we're going to, that's something, that's obviously a very complicated issue.
Sure,
And to define noxious odor.
Yeah.
in
Right.
that situation.
Yeah, and now the legality, and so I would say the best thing you can do is have that person contact Megan via email.
okay,
And be as specific as possible with the complaint, particularly with an address. And then we'll most likely have to filter that through city attorney and the police department and see what's the appropriate mechanism, if any.
sure,
May just be something that we don't get involved with.
right.
So that would be my advice.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and that's what I was saying. Like I said, I wasn't sure what, obviously what's going on, the perception of one person or, a couple neighbors. You never know what it is exactly, but I said they're growing the number of plants they're allowed to grow in their yard. I mean, you're gonna smell it. So, just like you do any other flower or plant. So it's maybe just a matter of getting used to that a little bit too. So. All right, well, thank you. Thank you all for, learning about waste to energy again.
Thank you.
Okay, my turn, yes. So Lincoln Country Club meeting, or the former Lincoln Country Club property, really productive, really good meeting. I think we made a lot of progress. I had to cut out early, so I'm sorry to everyone for that, but I think a lot of progress was also made after I left. So that's what's important, that we're moving forward. Finance committee meeting, another great presentation by Dan DeVries. Credit to him, credit to our manager's office, and credit to everyone there that's working together on that. Looking forward to that being approved on June 14th in my absence. Fire ceremony was great. Seeing Alan Schmidt promoted was great. The whole crew over at Fire, getting to, I guess, take a peek at what's going on over at the Lincoln property was also a nice bonus. And the only other thing I had on my list here is on May 19th, we had Planning Commission. We did approve an accessory building for Royston Insurance over on Kinney, which is, I guess, just adjacent to Hampton Lakes Apartments. One thing that we did go pretty firm on there was the extension of their sidewalk. And that kind of speaks to, I guess we talk about asset management and having a longer range vision for the improvements that we want to make in certain areas. I saw Kinney was one of the roads that was pretty due for some upgrades, but we've talked a lot about wanting to make improvements all along that road and more substantial than, I guess, the resurfacing work that may be needed. And at what point do we prioritize that project and try to align that with the timing of the other necessary upgrades to the surface pavement. So that, I guess, just something for all of us to chew on a little bit about how we prioritize those projects in the timeline when we know there are major upgrades that we want to make to certain roads that may or may not align with the timelines of when they need improvement. And yeah, we also approved the Great Lakes Capital Spec Building. We all voted on the industrial exemption for that. So that is past its final area site plan approval, and we'll be having both of its entrances on the new extension of Hendershot. For me.
Madam Clerk?
Nothing here, thanks.
All right. My only two things, backing up Commissioner Glanville on the waste energy piece, it's been a topic with the mayors in our conversations for quite some time, and I'm glad to see it starting to really not just percolate, but really come to the surface now. The one key thing there is the townships as a generalization are not on board yet. And they absolutely, it's unrealistic and we have the same conundrum with the rapid too, of townships wanting service, but not necessarily wanting to invest in it at all in some cases, or not anywhere to the levels that the cities are. And I think there's a fiduciary responsibility we have as leaders of our city to kind of dig our heels in on those and say, no, if we're partners in this together, we're partners in this together. And it should be proportionate to the cities, the townships we have. So I think more to come on that. And for what it's worth, Mayor Kepley has taken the lead for the mayors. He's very, very passionate on that topic. And then secondly, I did see on the list, and just to remind me, there was the road list. And it made me think of bumping into you out walking the other night. You were out walking, Cody. I pulled over I saw Commissioner Granville coming by. She sees a car coming around. This was on Richmond. And she immediately steps out of the way because we have no curbs or gutters. That's a tighter road in that spot, as we all know as you go through that area. And there are a number of younger families, and that continues to evolve in there. And you had stepped off to the side of the road because there's I'm coming out. Another car is coming. There's no room for pedestrians on the road. And I had stopped to talk to you a second, but I literally felt we were watching the cars coming this way. And I had seen on the list, I think earlier, Gordonshire as a potential sidewalk area, Gordonshire to Richmond. If we're going to go that far, I'd like to see us, and I know it's problematic, or I'm sorry, Deerfield, but on Richmond, Gordonshire, entrance to your development, out to Deerfield, so the entrance to where I live, but it stopped there. It was on the list. So if we're getting that far, let's make that connectivity further down, coming further down Richmond. It made me think of it after bumped into the other night coming down there, because that is a dangerous area, and especially early in the morning or at dusk.
Yeah, it's really hard at
You
dusk.
cannot see. And we have a new light outside on Richmond there that helps. And then the intersection itself is much brighter with the LEDs there, those Cobra heads, but that doesn't help us walking down those other areas there.
The other thing I wanted to mention too is I love the new cut through from your street.
Oh,
by
yes,
the
yes, with the
church
yes,
across. I was
yes.
like, oh, I didn't realize. So my walk home was a little bit shorter than my walk
Yes,
over.
yes. That is kind of nice in there. There's actually, I'm coming out this afternoon. I noticed somebody actually walking a stroller through there,
Yeah.
going into the neighborhood.
So I think, I mean, I hear what you're saying and I would support sidewalks anywhere. But I think at least now there's an option, right? You can walk through there a little bit more safely and people can get a little bit more easily over to Whiffic.
So maybe that
And-
is, from Gordonshire to Deerfield and then coming through the neighborhood, which would welcome the pedestrians coming through there. So
Yeah.
that might be that connectivity there. Good point.
Yeah.
So, okay. I had nothing else. Representative, thank you again for joining us. Chief, as always. And gosh dang it, how nice is it to be up together? We don't have to worry about the distance. We don't have to worry about the mask. Oh, by the way, Memorial Day Parade, thanks to Sharon, Michelle, Nicole, Frank, and Daryl, just helping bring that together. Again, it's going to look a little bit different, and we could probably at this point go to a walk-in type of thing, but I think it would just upset the whole planning and let's just stay the course with what we have right now. It's the right thing to do. And then secondly, I'm actually really excited. Nicole's putting together the plans for the summer concert series, and we are full speed ahead on that one. So, and don't be surprised if there's an extra surprise or two in there along the summer route here. So that being said, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment and support.
I'll make the motion.
And actually, before I have a motion support. Before we do that, I talked with the managers earlier today. July 1, Jason Rotman, you will be back to your family on Monday night. So we're going to leave the hybrid world. We're going to get through the month of June because I think out of respect to others, there's still a bit of a comfort level, but we really feel by the end of June, we're in a spot here. If people, we're also easily accessible. They can either reach out to us or they can come here in person. But either way, our hybrids will continue through June and then we're done at the end of the June. And I believe that'll apply to all the meetings. So you definitely get your family back.
It's a lot easier now that we have clarity from the state, right?
Yes. Thank you, Commissioner. All right. So we had a motion for adjournment from Commissioner Rapp, support from Commissioner Groders. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right. We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.